My little itty-bitty bruiser buddies.
United States heavyweight champion, Brazil.
The world's heavyweight champion from the AWA, Nick Bockwinkel.
The Midwest supporting, bruiser loving, positivity spreading, world's most dangerous podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty as he supports and promotes Midwest pro wrestling. Keep on growing with the Midwest Express. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
And welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your host, Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us, however you do, as we are available on all podcast platforms. You know, that has been 2 years we've been doing this show, and I still have trouble saying podcast platforms. You'd think I'd get past it. But thank you for joining us. We've had a trying week here on the episode. It's obviously out a day late. We intended to record with Keith Preston, owner of World's Finest Wrestling. And I had an outage in my area. We lost internet for a day, and I couldn't record with him, and then I couldn't obviously get the show uploaded because of it, so it was a whole mess. But we're back rolling. Show is out a day late, but it is out nonetheless. So the intro here is short and just me. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show for you. We have an interview with up-and-comer Wade Kastle, and then we have a Whatever Happened To with Johnny Law. If you're in the Midwest, Indiana area, you will recognize Johnny Law from the old EWF days, working for Jason Maples. So we got a good show for you. Thank you for being here. Let's just get right to it, right? I had all my all my faults for the week and things going wrong, and I just don't have the patience for it. So let's just jump right into it. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have that interview with Wade Kastle, so stick around. If you are looking for the best books, DVDs, and posters on classic wrestling nostalgia, then you want to visit crowbarpress.com. There are literally dozens of titles there, including biographies of the likes of Bruiser Brody, Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff, and of course, Dick the Bruiser, as we've spoke about here on the Dave Dynasty Show. You want to visit crowbarpress.com for all of your classic wrestling nostalgia needs. Again, that is crowbarpress.com.
And welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your co-host, Ike Isaacs, and today I am joined with yet again another amazing talent. We have Wade Kastle. How are we doing today?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Well, hey, Wade, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. First question, as always, where are you from, Wade?
I am from Connersville, Indiana, sir.
Connersville, Indiana, very nice. I've been there a couple of times, sports-related, mostly in high school. What was it like growing up in Connersville? You play any sports?
I played a little bit of basketball. I did a little bit of baseball. Kind of got out of it whenever before my senior year in high school. I kind of got out of the sport ordeal and got into some other stuff. But it wasn't bad growing up there. I mean, you know, there was a lot of great people, of course, just like any other small town. You know, it kind of hits its low ends, and you know, you got, you know, things happen financially with the town, and it kind of becomes kind of a ghost town in a sense. So that's kind of where it's coming from right now. I'm actually right now residing from Greenfield, Indiana, so. Yeah, I kind of had to get out of that town. It was getting a little too much for me.
No, I understand. Yeah, that's kind of how it is sometimes. You know, growing up in the Midwest, you have those towns that sometimes just kind of disappear off the face of the earth. Really, I mean, it is kind of poof out of there.
Right. Yeah. I didn't have much of a choice, man. I mean, it was more or less stay there and live in poverty or move somewhere else and just kind of, you know, get out of the whole ordeal and try to better myself in a sense.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
And I think it's another Midwest thing is a lot of people don't realize that you grew up in these towns and sometimes they just suck you in a little bit.
Oh yeah. That Connersville would definitely did that to me, and did it to a lot of people that I grew up with. I didn't want to end up like them, so like I said, I had to get out of there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And probably for the better, obviously.
Yes.
But I guess kind of in another direction. Now, this question we always get a couple different mixed answers on. Some people are like, yeah, I've been watching wrestling since I was a kid. Some people are like, yeah, I didn't really watch wrestling until I was a teenager. But did you ever watch wrestling as a kid? Do you have any early memories of wrestling?
Oh my God, yeah, man. I would say probably the first match that I think that actually caught my eye was Mr. Perfect, Bret the Hitman Hart, SummerSlam '91, I believe. My memory's a little distorted. I've been hitting the head a little bit too much. It was Mr. Perfect, Bret Hart, SummerSlam '91. Bret Hart got the win over Mr. Perfect. But the match that actually stays in my mind, one of the first matches that I really got into, was probably Rowdy Piper and Bret Hart from WrestleMania, I believe, 8.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah. And just the finish is what really got me overall, because Piper was like, I got you, you got him in a sleeper hold, and then Bret runs up the turnbuckle and flips over him and gets the cover and, goes home victorious. Yeah, man, I've watched wrestling since as far back as I could remember. Mainly a WWE fan, or WWF at the time, excuse me.
Right.
Until I get a little bit older and realized that there was more wrestling out there than WWF, whatever. Got into the NWA, got into WCW, NWA. Then kind of starting to get into the Extreme Championship Wrestling. And then I got into some wrestling overseas. I got into the Japan style wrestling and all that. So yeah, man, I've been watching wrestling for years though. Not to get into a bunch of stories, but I got into wrestling when I was really young, and it's always been my dream, man, to be a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
I idolize, a lot of the older guys. Ric Flair, of course. Who doesn't idolize Ric Flair? If you don't, and just a few others. So yeah, but not to get into all that at the moment. I'm sure you're going to ask that question later, or along the lines of. But yeah, I've watched wrestling when I was a kid. Yeah,
absolutely. And you kind of already started to answer it, but who? I mean, if you had to give me a handful of your favorite wrestlers, like of all time, who would they be?
Well, I'm sure I can mention Benoit without getting stones cast my way.
No, hey, I'm a huge Chris Benoit fan. I feel like people just need to be able to separate the fact from fiction, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to set all the what he did aside, if you can look past that, he's probably one of the greatest wrestlers that ever laced up a pair of boots, in my opinion. Man, Chris Jericho, I watched him from his stuff from Smoky Mountain all the way up. He's always been a big influence on me. William Regal is actually probably my favorite wrestler of all time.
Really?
I'm a William Regal fanatic. I will go back on the network and I will watch his stuff from WCW, early WCW, even when he went and did that stupid lumberjack gimmick in WWF early '98 or mid '98, whenever it was. Yeah, I've always been a Regal fan. Give me a second to think here. Bret Hart, of course. I've always loved watching Bret Hart wrestle. Along the lines of Justin Liger, I like. There's so many, man. I'd be here all night just giving you guys that inspired me to do the thing, or guys that I love to watch. But I would have to say, if you had to ask me who was my favorite wrestler, I would probably have to say it would be William Regal, without a shadow of a doubt.
And that's actually cool because, obviously I love William Regal. I think that he's one of the better, I guess you could say, I honestly can specifically say he's one of the most underrated wrestlers.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I feel like he was just kind of glossed over in the era in which he was in, and obviously they've kind of recognized him a little more now. because he's kind of like the GM of NXT and whatnot. So, but absolutely, that's a good choice. I commend you for that one.
Well, thank you. And if you got to go adapting to the environment type of guy, I would have to go with Rob Van Dam. I mean, the guy kind of built his style around the extreme style, and it worked out so good for him. So he's probably on my top list as one of my favorite wrestlers as well as Rob Van Dam. I mean, everything he did was so graceful. I loved everything he did as well. So I had to mention him. Rob Van Dam's probably one of my faves too. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Rob Van Dam's another good one. So then, I guess kind of along the same mindset, of kind of the early stages of wrestling, who you like and all that. Obviously, at some point, you were like, I'm not just going to be a fan of wrestling. I'm going to be a wrestler. And sometimes people say there was a moment that just kind of clicked for him. And some people were like, I've always wanted to do this. But was there a moment that made you say, hey, I want to wrestle?
There's a few. I mean, of course, people's mentioned this a gazillion times. The whole Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 12 Iron Man match. I mean, that match is epic. Of course, people are going to hold that up at a higher standard. But they're going to be like, that's probably why I wrestle. And that's one of them. Just because at the time, I was a Shawn Michaels fan until, we're not going to get into all that. But anyways, I was a Shawn Michaels fan, but, Shawn and Bret, just watching them, WrestleMania 12, just doing the thing. And, that kind of inspired me. I was thinking right then and there, like, man, I would love to do that. I would just love that reaction. I would love to get that pinfall and just have those people just, jump up, cheer for joy, hey, Wade Kastle, just that standing ovation. That was one of them. And, of course, let me see, 96 is when that took place. I was only 10. I was 10 at the time. So, let's fast forward to, was it WrestleMania 17? The Rock and Stone Cold, that match, and the whole thing with their whole rivalry was epic. But that match, for some reason, it just stood out. It was great. Man, there's so many. There's too many for me to sit here and name one day. But I would have to say those would probably be the two that I just was like, man, I got to do this. This is something I have to do for the rest of my life. If I don't do this, then I don't know what else I'm going to do. And, ever since then, I've, inspired to be a pro wrestler. I mean, it took many years to do, of course, but, right. I finally got into it. I'm happy with what I'm doing now.
Absolutely. And then obviously you did take, like you said, you took the next step. You became a wrestler. So what was your training like? Who did you train with, and how did that get started?
Well, before I became a wrestler, I didn't think I could do the traveling ordeal. I became a father at an early age. I mean, if you want to get personal, I became a father at a really early age. So the traveling, the nonstop, traveling on the road, making pounds, at the time, it just wasn't for me. So I did some MMA. I did some training, which, of course, I had training prior. I did some training and did the MMA thing for a little bit, and I realized, man, it just, why do this when I can just go entertain people? Well, this is, and I wasn't happy. I had fun, but I wasn't happy. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. So 2015, I met up with some guys through Richmond, Indiana, and I did some training with a fella named Robert Stedham and another guy named Stephen Collins. They showed me the ropes. They took me on the road with them. Did at least 2 hours of training before every show. I did the managerial thing. I stayed outside the ring, or I'd stay in the locker room and kind of keep an eye on the matches to watch. I made my debut in September 2015 in Richmond, Indiana, against my trainer, Rob Stedham, and it was a good match for what it was. Right. Not everybody's first match is their best, but
I'd say very, very few are their best.
Yeah. But I did it, and right then and there, it was like, man, it was, this is what I want to do.
Right.
These people are cheering me. They're giving me all kinds of crap. They're telling me I suck. They're telling me they like me. They're liking some of my moves, but they're hating some of my moves. I'm like, man, this is it. This is what I want to do. Training, though, if you want to go as far as like how it was rough. A lot of the guys were rough on me. When you're coming up in the business, when you're training, you kind of get treated. You don't get treated the nicest. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Right.
You don't get treated the nicest, and I didn't at first, but people started giving me respect when I started getting in the ring and showing them what I had, and yeah, I mean, it was just, it was a pretty fierce training segment. I went through about 7 months worth of training on the road. Every weekend, I didn't do the weekdays, of course, but every weekend for 7 months I was on the road. I was training, I was busting my ass, excuse my French, and doing what I had to do to just prove to everybody that I wanted to be here and I needed to be here, and this is exactly what I wanted to do and that I deserved it. And I feel like over the course of the past, 4-ish years, I've done that. I mean, I'm not been everywhere, but I've been, around enough to prove that, Wade Kastle, has what it takes. Let's give this kid a chance. Yeah, man, sorry to get off subject, but
no, you're good.
training was fierce, and it was fun, and I learned a lot, and I went out and got some different training after a couple of years in the business with another guy named Jeremy Warner. He good guy. He showed me a lot of stuff that I didn't learn the first time around, and and I'm still learning, as a lot of us are. You could be in the business for 10 years and you're still learning things. I just did this. This is always a learning experience. You never stop.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's a very important part of being in this industry, is that you have to be a constant learner. You can never stop learning. When you stop learning, means that's when you stop wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess kind of along the same track here. I mean, you had that progression of loving wrestling as a kid, and eventually saying, this is what I want to do, and then taking that step to train and to get better and to actually become that athlete in this case. So
yes.
But you actually came up in independent wrestling at a very good time. Independent wrestling it's explosive right now. I mean, it's the best it's ever been, probably.
Yes, I agree.
So having been trained and having started in this uphill peak of wrestling, what do you think the best and worst part about independent wrestling is?
Just the fire and the passion of the guys in the locker room, man. Just you can see it. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been as far as being in the locker room with some of the boys or what your actual background is with it, but man, just being in a locker room with some of the guys that are coming up and the things they want to do and how they want to impress each and every one of the paying customers that come and watch us, hone our craft, man. It's just, man, it's mind-blowing. Like, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and put myself on a pedestal and say I'm the best by any means, because I feel like, in a sense, I have a lot of work to do. But there's just so many guys that just go out there and every night and hone their craft and literally kill themselves to make these fans, the audience, get into the show, get into the match, get into their character. It's just it's the passion and fire that burns within the hearts of the independent pro wrestlers that are in the business today, man. That's what it is. And I feel like, and no offense to the WWE, but independent wrestling right now is where it's at. It's not the mainstream entertainment, sports entertainment. It's independent pro wrestling is where it's at. It's the guys that go out there and give 150% 50% each and every night to show these fans that, hey, I got what it takes to be a star. This is what we have. This is what we're offering. Take it in, drink it in, etc. It's just it's the boys in the back, each and every one of them. Whether they're well known or just now coming up or will never be known by anybody, it's them, man.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, obviously, I think that's probably one of the best parts of it. But also, independent wrestling sometimes has that, I guess you could say, dark side of the moon vibe. What do you think the worst part? What do you think the worst part of independent wrestling is?
Oh man, I'd be here for days. Man, honestly, the worst part of independent wrestling is the fact that the guys beat themselves up if they feel like they don't give 100%. In my opinion, is the worst part. And it's not just. It's the fact that, like I said before, I'm not going to keep repeating myself, but we go out there, we give our all, and, some of the fans aren't biting, but, we feel like, man, we're not doing what we wanted to do, so, we feel like, we're kind of beating ourselves up for things that we didn't do in the match, and we kind of put ourselves down about it. If you want to get really technical, it's a lot of the feds as well. And I'm not crapping on every single fed, but it's the fact that you got these outlaw federations that think that you can get by with paying these guys that come out here and bust their ass and give 100% in the ring, and you can just pay them with a handshake and a hot dog. You can't do that, man. And it's not, I'm not speaking from experience personally. I mean, it's just, stories that I hear being on the road and hearing from these guys that, don't give it their all. And it's not even that. It's guys that give more as well. Guys that give 1,000% of everything. They leave their families, 6 days a week. They don't see their kids. They don't see their wives, or they don't see their husbands or whatever. And they don't get recognized, and they're so much better than the guys that are getting looked at that are just a look,
right.
That are just a look and don't have talent. And I'm not speaking on anybody in particular. I'm just saying, I've seen it. It has been witnessed, and it's that irks me a lot more than anything. Is feds not paying their workers or workers killing themselves and not getting any recognition. Oh. Here's a handshake, and, go ahead and get yourself some nachos, kid. You deserve it. Come on, man. These, like I said, these guys leave their families and do their thing, sell their merch, make their money, and still don't get recognition and still get crapped on by the industry. And I think that's bogus. I could name a few right now that deserve to be at a higher pedestal than what they are. I'm not going to get into it. But, it's just, that's the dark side of the industry, man. You get to leave your family, and you come back broken and bruised, and feel like you gave everything and have earned nothing.
Right.
And that's the dark side of the industry, man.
Absolutely. And I've actually heard that a lot from people. That unfortunately the other side of the coin is that these people are, like you said, they're literally going out there giving it 180% and don't get that recognition.
Yeah.
And like you said, these people who have just a look are getting all this recognition. And it is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But, it's like you said, that's the dark side of the business, unfortunately.
Yeah, and there's guys out there looking like they can bench 1,000 pounds and can't body slam anybody.
Right.
And they get bookings more than somebody that could work the style of a William Regal or a Kurt Angle or, let's go like a Pete Dunne or, they can work like those cats and not get any recognition. But you got a guy that looks like he could bench about 400 pounds, but couldn't work to save his life. And I see that a lot, and it's bogus. I think it's crappy. I think that a lot of the guys that actually put the time and effort to train and to better themselves need more recognition than the guys that just bench at 400 pounds and just show up and, showboat. That's my opinion. And wrestling has changed so much over the course of the past 20 years. You got guys that, that are small that, are workhorses, or even big that are workhorses and don't get as much recognition as the guys that are just a look.
Right.
And I think that's bogus. I think it's really bogus.
No, absolutely. 100% agree with you. So I guess kind of along that same train of thought, talking about the goods and the bads of independent wrestling, one of the things that can be good, but can also be bad, is, having to travel. And, traveling's fun, but sometimes traveling is also expensive. It's also tiresome. So sometimes people will go to shows with other people, but when you usually work, do you go to shows with a group of people, or do you go by yourself? Do you roll solo?
That varies. It varies. I usually roll solo. Of course, rolling out a carpool is a lot easier, with expenses and all. But I travel solo a lot because I don't see. Here's another dark side of the business. And for all the guys that are listening, they'll probably agree with me. There's a lot of shady people in the wrestling business, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I've had some pretty shady experiences with some guys that I considered brothers and turned out to be some snakes in the grass. But anyways, I'm not getting into all that right now. It is a shady business in a sense. It's a fun business, but it can be shady. And so I choose now to go solo. And I have a few guys right now that I would take a bullet for in the business that, we are a brotherhood and that I would be more than willing to travel with. But, times are rough for everybody right now, financially. So it's kind of hard to get around. But right now I do travel solo. I try to travel all over Indiana. I actually have a show coming up next weekend in Shelbyville, Indiana, for New Era Pro Wrestling, or New Era Wrestling, sorry. I usually travel solo to that. I have a show in Indianapolis coming up real soon that I'll be traveling solo to. A few other places. Ohio, I travel a lot. That I usually travel solo. So I don't travel with a lot of guys anymore. But if it was on the table and the guys, my boys wanted to travel, I travel with a lot more guys. But right now it's just me doing it solo. It's less expensive that way in a sense. I mean, probably guys are like, how, they can help you with gas. Well, yeah, it's the same thing, but those guys that help you with gas won't pay for the food, so you got to kind of get their food after the show. So that kind of breaks your pocket too.
Right, absolutely. So I guess kind of on the same thought of driving to shows. Obviously, you drive a lot. You do a lot of traveling. You have any funny or interesting road stories about traveling?
Oh, good night. I got so many. I don't know how long you got.
Right.
Okay, well, there was this specific time we were going to Marion, Indiana for a show. It was Intense Championship Wrestling out of Marion, Indiana. Me and the guys that I actually trained with, this was back in 2016, I believe, and I could be wrong about the exact, I'm pretty sure it was 2016. And we went almost, and I don't know how this happened, we went almost 2 hours out of our way. So we were like about almost 2 hours We were supposed to be on the first half of the show. We were almost main event because I drove almost 2 hours out of the way because my GPS was not updated and I took the wrong route. We had a show in Richmond, Indiana with the same two guys, and we went to a Frickers after work. Are you familiar with Frickers?
You said Frickers or Rickers, like the gas station?
No, Frickers, like the freaking chicken chunks, Frickers.
No, I've never heard of that.
Oh, well, it's kind of like a chicken joint. It's similar to, I would say it's almost similar to Buffalo Wild Wings, but it's, okay. I mean, it's got its differences. Anyways, they got this like margarita jug type deal. I can't remember exactly what it's called, so forgive me, but it holds so much, and I can't give you the exact amount, but it holds so much. So me and all my buddies, or the guys we were working with, we are just chugging these margaritas, man. I mean, we are getting wasted. Can I talk about this on the show?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, making sure. We are getting completely trashed, man, and we end up leaving. And one of my guys, and I'm not going to mention names, because if he's listening, he's going to get a little upset about it. We get in the car, and he is just so emotional, man. And to me, it was kind of funny because I've never seen him break down like that. Because in the ring, he's a hard ass. On the outside of the ring, he's a hard ass. But when he's drunk, he's a lovable fella. He's so emotional, and it was just funny, man. Just hearing the things he would say. He's telling everybody in the car how much he loved them, and I love you guys so much. You guys are my brother. I mean, but and along the lines, they also say, when you're drunk, that comes out. The real you kind of comes out. So that made us feel good as well. He is our brother. He really feels that way. We love him to death. And I'm not going to mention the last name, but Rob, I know you're listening, and, I love you to death, dude. Oh, God, there's so many. There's a lot of nasty guys in the business, too, man. There's guys that'll make some of the, God, I don't want to mention names, but there's guys that'll make, like, some of the rookies, like, just do some of the nastiest, grotesque things, man. Like, rub them down in the locker room with oil, like completely, like all over, just because they're still greenhorns, is what we call the rookies in the business. It's just ridiculous how some of the guys act, man. There's not really been too many like crazy stories of me being on the road, because like I said, I travel alone a lot. I mean, unless you consider me trying to sing, certain songs to myself, and almost blowing my windows out, trying to sing. Other than that, man, nah, not too many crazy stories. Did get pulled over on the way to Ohio once and had a cop search my bag and asked if I was a stripper. That was interesting. Yeah, but other than that, man, I mean, it was, it's been a pretty fun road trip, all around. Nothing too crazy. I'm sure you probably heard worse. Yeah.
I've heard some pretty, so like it's both in the spectrum. It's never like in the middle. I either hear like, yeah, I almost died this one time, or yeah, we went to a McDonald's after a show. Nothing that's like, it's either super crazy or like super tame. And you're just kind of right in the middle, getting pulled over, getting asked if you're a stripper. That's a little crazy. Yeah.
The funny thing was, though, I'll probably get judged for this. Any of the boys that I roll with are listening, but I used to pack a thong, man. It's more comfortable with the gear that I wear, so I wear a man thong in the ring sometimes. I'm not gonna, I think that's mainly where that came from. He's like, are you a male stripper? I'm like, no, man, it's more comfortable to wear, it makes me aerodynamic when I wrestle. So, it's just, yeah, good times, man. I love being on the road.
That's right. You know, you can't blame the cop, right? You're just like, you know, I understand why you would ask that question, but no.
Yeah. I mean, I could have been like, yeah, man, I could have messed with them a little bit, told them there was whipped cream and a banana in the other pocket if you want to find out. I could have been silly with them, but yeah, I've learned a long time ago not to joke around with cops too much because they might take you too serious.
Right? They may not appreciate too much, but
Yeah.
So, I guess to change gears a little bit, kind of talk about. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the wrestling you, the you that gets in the ring, the you that travels to and from shows.
Right.
But to talk a little bit about, you know, the you outside of the ring. What's one thing most people don't know about Wade Kastle? Do you have any quirky hobbies or, you know, anything you do on the side?
Well, first off, I'm a pretty corny romantic. You can ask my old lady that. And I tell you, if you ever watch me wrestle, man, it's a completely different Wade Kastle from in the ring, from the outside of the ring, man. I mean, in the ring, I portray a psychopath. I am nuts. I am crazy to the core, man. I will, you know, do everything in my power to win. On the outside, on the outside of the ring, I'm kind of quiet.
Right.
I'm a corny romantic. I'm a family guy. I have 4 beautiful girls, children. I love dearly. They are my world. I'm a gamer. A lot of the guys in the back already know that. I love video games. If I could get paid, for 8-hour shift to sit on one video game and play it for 8 hours, that's my dream job. In a sense, that's just me. I love music. I'm a family guy. I'm not really exciting on the outside of the ring. Like I mentioned before, I used to do MMA. I was really big into martial arts. I got out of it a few years back just because, traveling on the road, it's kind of hard to keep up with, with training in the martial arts ordeal. I did jiu-jitsu for years. I trained a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu and some kickball boxing. So I kind of know my way around, throwing some hands, I guess you would say. I did that for a little bit. But I've always fallen back to that passion of pro wrestling. That's always been my thing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, on the outside of the ring, I'm just a normal guy. I got kids. I got a girlfriend I love very much. I play video games. I watch movies. I do what I can to support my family, man. I'm just a family guy.
No, yeah, for sure. And, a lot of people know this about me who listen to the show is that I, too, am a big video game guy. What's your favorite video game currently?
Oh, man. Well, I still yet to play the WWE 2K19. I will get to that eventually. I'm a PlayStation guy, man. I don't know about you. I'm a PlayStation guy. So
most of my life I've been a PlayStation person, and in fact, I would probably get a PlayStation because there's some games coming out that are going to be PlayStation exclusive, but I do have an Xbox currently.
Yeah, as do I. I have an Xbox One currently. I actually have 2 in my household right now, which is throwing me off. I need a PlayStation.
Right, exactly.
If anybody's listening, I would like one for Christmas. Right now, honestly, I just had started because I just got back on the Xbox kick. I didn't have one, of course, when the Xbox One came out. I went straight to the PS4. When I had the PS4, before my PS4 took a dump on me, I had God of War, and I'm gonna tell you right now, man, that is probably the best game I've played in the past 10 years. In my opinion, past 10 years, God of War, PlayStation 4, hands down, the best game. I just had started playing Halo 5. I've always been a Halo guy. Halo Reach is my favorite, not going to lie. But I just started playing Halo 5, and so far it's decent. The favorite game right now, man, that's hard to decide. I'm going to go back to Skyrim. Skyrim is probably still one of my favorite games, man. I've beat it several times. I've conquered it. I mean, I've not got 100% because I still don't think that's possible. And if somebody's got 100%, well, screw you. Yeah, man, Skyrim's always been fun. God of War, the newer God of War is fun. My girlfriend plays Elder Scrolls Online, which I've not really got into, but it seems like it's pretty fun. And I'm actually looking really forward to Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm a big Red Dead guy. I played Revolver and the first Redemption, and I'm really looking forward to playing Red Dead 2. So.
Absolutely. And I heard a lot of games in there that I love too. I'm looking forward to Red Dead Redemption as well. I played the first one as well as Undead Nightmare. Super good.
Yeah.
Right now, for people who out there who care, I'm replaying Resident Evil 7. I'm a horror game fanatic, personally.
Oh, my God. Okay, well, I got to ask you a question. How did you feel about The Evil Within? Both.
I've played both of them, and I have beaten both of them, and I think they're both fantastic games.
Awesome. Yeah.
I have The Evil Within 2, actually, for Xbox. I played the first one when I had a PlayStation 3. I played it on PlayStation 3 way back when.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess I can't really say that God of War is probably my favorite game in the past 10 years because I played a lot. Like Evil Within 2. Honestly, the first Evil Within was a lot creepier than the second one. It just got me. And you spoke Resident Evil 7. I'm telling you what, man, that game. I played that game in the dark, and I literally jumped out of my seat a few times, man. I mean, there were some bad moments. I'm a big Resident Evil guy too. Are you excited about the Resident Evil 2 remake?
I mean, only thing I can say is hell yeah, I'm excited for it because Resident Evil 2 was the first one that I ever played, period. And so seeing that get remade in like such a way, I'm over the moon. I'm like so excited for him. I've already asked for it. Me too. I've told every single one of my family members, I'm like, if you give me anything for Christmas, just pre-order me this game. Like,
yeah, exactly. I'm for that one too, man. That comes out. Well, I don't even know when that comes out. I ain't really been following too much of it, but I do know that it's going to drop here soon, and I'm pretty stoked because I beat the Resident Evil 2 for PlayStation 1. Sorry, not 2. Right. And man, it seemed like it took forever. So I hope they don't put 2 discs on this one. I hope it's 1 disc. You run through, you do your thing, blah blah blah. It's over and done with.
Back in the day when they used to have 2 discs for games.
Oh yeah, that one and Final Fantasy 7 for the PlayStation 1 drove me nuts, man. I think that Final Fantasy 7 had 4 discs, if I'm not mistaken.
You're probably right, because that sounds like something that Final Fantasy would do.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Super pumped for that. But anyways, I guess this is a wrestling podcast. We better talk about wrestling, right?
Yeah. We'd be on here. If you got a video game podcast, get a hold of me. We'll talk for a couple hours on the video game we're doing for sure.
Absolutely. I freaking would. Don't even tempt me. So I guess to get the train back on the rails just a little bit. So as a wrestler, as a human, we all have goals in life. And 2018 it's coming quick. I mean, like we're about done with 2018 and 2019 is right on the horizon. So what are your plans? What are your goals for the next year and a few months?
Well, for the next few months, I have a few seminars that I'm going to attend. There's a seminar tomorrow I'm actually going to attend at the New Era Wrestling Academy. And I could be mispronouncing his name because my pronunciation's always off at times. It's Chris, I think it's Silvio. He is coming to Shelbyville tomorrow for a seminar. It's going to be epic. A lot of guys are going to show around the area. It's going to be fun. Bob Evans is coming to Connersville, Indiana on December 29th for a seminar, which I'm going to attend. This is going to be epic as well. It's going to be fun. I'm going to get a lot of knowledge from that guy. Tommy Dreamer is doing a seminar on Thanksgiving in Indianapolis, Indiana, that I'm going to attend. So pretty much along the lines, the next few months, I'm trying to better myself as a pro wrestler. So that way I know what I need to work on and know what I need to better myself in. But as far as next year's concerned, man, I am honestly trying to get myself out there more. I'm trying to get out there to more states, more towns. My actual dream is to actually wrestle in the UK, or is actually to go over in Japan and wrestle. I've always been a big fan of Japanese strong style, Japanese wrestling. Of course, I've taken martial arts, so I've always been a fan of things of that nature. I want to go overseas and wrestle. I want to make a name for myself. And a lot of the guys in the business will tell you, I want to be a WWE superstar. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not a superstar. I want to be a wrestler. I would love to go to Japan and wrestle. I would love to go to England and wrestle. Anywhere in the United Kingdom and wrestle. I would love to go. I would love to wrestle in the indie scene for the rest of my career. I make a name for myself there because right now, like you said, it's exploding. I mean, let's just take a look at Cody Rhodes. Yeah. Cody Rhodes left WWE maybe a year or two ago. I'm not sure I'm correct with the timeline. But he left a few years ago, and he's over in New Japan making a name for himself. He's Ring of Honor. He's one of the biggest wrestlers, biggest stars out there right now. He's phenomenal. I've always been a Cody Rhodes fan. And that's what I want to do. I don't want to ever make it to that place. I would rather keep myself on the independent scene, travel the world, be myself, do my own thing, and at the end of the day, sit back and be like, man, I did it. This is me. This is what I wanted to do. I didn't do it under anybody else's circumstances, under anybody else's strings, right. Under anybody else's, litigation. This is what I want to do. I want to travel the world on the independent scene. I want to make myself. I want to make a name for myself there.
Absolutely. And I don't think there's any better goal to have but then to do that. So 100% excited to see that happen for you.
Thank you.
But I guess kind of to wind down a little bit here with us here, something I've been told is that World's Finest Wrestling has a pretty big event coming up on December 29th in Connersville, Indiana.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about this, actually Connersville a little bit earlier, but tell us a little bit about this event.
Well, December 29th of this year, World's Finest Wrestling is hosting an event in Connersville, Indiana at the Expo Hall in Connersville, Indiana. I can't give you an exact address because I don't know it off the top of my head. Sorry.
Good.
But, man, there's going to be a lot of amazing talent on this card, man. Back in June, I competed in a tournament to crown the first ever World's Finest Wrestling champion. I made it to the finals. I don't know if you're familiar with Apollo Star.
Absolutely.
It was me and him in the finals, and, he took one home for the team. I, of course, lost. It was a mistake. It was a slip-up. It won't happen again if I ever get the opportunity to go one-on-one with Mr. Apollo Star, which, by the way, I have much respect for. December 29th, I will step in the ring with a man that is fairly new to the business. His name is Angelo, I think it's Gargetto. I could be mispronouncing it. But I don't think he's ready to be in the ring with me one-on-one. like I said before, I'm a different man on the outside of the ring.
Right.
On the inside of the ring is a different story. I'm crazy. I'm a psychopath. I will tear you limb from limb until you can't move anymore. I will finish you off. I will get to 1, 2, 3, or I will make you tap. It doesn't matter. Whatever I can do to secure a victory, I will do it. It doesn't matter. Now let's step out. Let's go beyond the talent that we have on the card. We have the Iron Demon Shane Mercer on the card. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. Very, 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 very talented guy. Apollo Star, like I mentioned earlier, is on the card. We have the Isaiah. I'm sure you're familiar with him as well. He's on the card. We got a lot of guys. Matt Vengeance, I don't know if you're aware of who he is on the card. Mason Alexander, myself, like I'd mentioned. Chris Caliber, Rampage Radisson, Donnie Idol. I mean, I could just keep going and going and going and going. I mean, we have so many names that are on this card. This event is going to be epic. December 29th, for all of you that are listening, come out, Connorsville, Indiana. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Show up, give your support to indie wrestling. Like I said, you will not be disappointed in the event that will take place that night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just from the card alone, sounds amazing. But I guess one last thing for you before we kind of wrap up. Where can people follow you? Obviously, they're probably going to want to come see this show, and I would imagine you're probably going to post something about it if you have social media. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So what kind of social media can our fans come follow you and just check out what you're doing?
You can follow me on Instagram at the original Connors Villain. You can follow me on Twitter at Castle Kills All. You can also follow me on Facebook, Wade Kastle. There is a like page. Like and share, ladies and gentlemen. I will be sharing on my private profile, or shoot profile is what we like to call it, but I'm not going to give that out to y'all. That's private. But you can follow me on Instagram at the original Connors Villain, Twitter excuse me, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, at Castle Kills All, or Facebook, look up Wade Kastle. I will be sharing all this information on my pages, on my social media accounts. And please give me a follow, like, share, post, whatever, give me your feedback. Booking information is the same. You can find me at WadeCastle86 at gmail.com. For booking inquiries. But yeah, man, I mean, that's right there. That's how you're going to find everything there is to know about me and everything there is to know about WFW. WFW actually has a page as well. Look us up on Facebook. I'm not sure about the Instagram. I apologize ahead of time. WFW officials, I apologize. If we do have one, I'm not aware. But if you get that information, share. But follow us on Facebook. Actually, WFW does have a Twitter. I believe it is at World's Finest Wrestling. So look us up, please.
Absolutely. Well, real quick before I kind of go into my little spiel here at the end, I want to thank you, Wade, for giving us the time tonight. Getting to pick your brain a little bit about the wrestling you and the outside of the ring you.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. It's actually been pretty fun talking to you. Way a lot better than my last podcast, believe it or not. So it's been fun, man.
Hey, I'm glad to hear that. Well, hey, so everybody, you know what to do now. Go follow them on the social medias. Go follow WFW on social media. And, of course, again, World's Finest Wrestling in December, the 29th, in Connersville, Indiana. I don't see a reason why anybody should miss this if you're in the Midwest area. Connersville is in Indiana, but I'm pretty sure if you live anywhere within like a 4-hour radius, it's probably worth it. Anyways, thank you again, Wade, for coming on here. And everybody,
Thank you.
Not a problem. And everybody remember, support independent wrestling. It is the lifeblood of wrestling.
Whatever happened to you?
And we're back with Whatever Happened To, the segment where we catch up on some often overlooked names from Midwest Wrestling's past. I am Mike Isaacs, and today we're chatting with none other than Johnny Law. How are we doing today, sir?
Wonderful. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Living the dream. Living the dream. I can't say anything else, right? Well, hey, we'll go ahead and jump right into this, because after all, this is a wrestling podcast. So tell us how you got started in wrestling.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. I got started in 1997. Family knew that I was interested in trying to figure out how to train and get involved in the business, so to speak. And they ran into none other than Hero Legends owner and promoter, Jason Maples, at a signing at I believe it was a Walmart in central Indiana.
Wow.
Gave me a holler, got me over there, and I got to talking with him. And I don't know if he had promoted a show yet, but I think I was one of Jason's first trainees, and had my first match in late 1997 or early 1998. A couple battle royals, as is usually the case, before he paired me up with another clean-cut, young-looking fella. They called us judge and jury and called us police brutality, and briefly thereafter, I started using the Johnny Law moniker.
Very, very cool. So then, in your early days, tell us a little bit about your training, because obviously you trained in a very different era than most people probably trained in. So tell us about what your training was like.
Oh, it was. It is sort of the oddness you occasionally hear from some of the guys. Jason didn't have a ring set up in a permanent location, so he brought some of us up to the YMCA in Marion and just used the judo or the gymnastics mats, and practice taking bumps and collar and elbow tie-ups and all of the basics, and you learned really quickly how to take a flat back bump properly, because there was not a lot of forgiveness in those judo mats. And as someone who had trained in judo a bit in my youth, I was extremely respectful of those mats, because they're marginally better than concrete. So
Right. So it was pretty interesting. Then you had a little bit of more, like you said, he didn't have a ring, and I feel like everybody and their mom has a ring nowadays. So
it was a tremendous upgrade when Jason acquired a ring of his own. Certainly, it made things a lot more comfortable.
Right.
And you could at least practice off the ropes at that point.
Right. You didn't have to pretend that there were some imaginary ropes, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, those. Oh, I remember them wistfully, actually, because as much as it hurt, it was tremendous fun,
Right.
which really does highlight the mentality, for good or bad, that those of us that give this a shot have.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, right? Having fun and making a living off of it, or trying to make a living off of it.
At least a few bucks, right?
Right, yeah. A few bucks on a hot dog, right? Pat on the back.
Hey, occasionally there's a hamburger.
Right. That's right. So obviously, when you got trained, you obviously kind of made that progression from, a fan of wrestling to training and becoming a wrestler. You have your first match and you just kind of go for it. But what were some of the places that you worked in your days of wrestling? Some of the places that you frequented?
I was most commonly at Jason's EWF in Marion and its various incarnations from as soon as he started promoting and 1998 all the way up through, I was working regularly through 2003 and then sporadically thereafter. So mostly with them, but for a period of time during college, I made a real go of it to try and show up at every group. And I think I hit everybody in the Indiana Midwestern area except for IWA Mid-South. And to be honest, I didn't hit IWA Mid-South because it was kind of pre-internet in the sense that there wasn't a lot of great advertising. I didn't know about their shows until the period of time when they ran fewer shows because they got in trouble with the State National Guard and weren't able to use the Armory for a period of time. So I only found out about IWA Mid-South around the time that I was reading a newspaper article. So I did some time with one of the incarnations of WWA running in Indianapolis. Definitely with Basher, one of his shows. Several times with HPW in Columbus. I actually know WWE referee Jason Ayers from my time at IU. I was promoting a show at IU, and he introduced himself and brought me over to HPW. So I did that several times. And I'm trying to think of where else. There were a lot of one-off shows where the company would be here for 3 months and then never seen again. But
right. Yeah, that's kind of that unfortunate aspect of independent wrestling is that a lot of people try to promote, but not everybody can, and they just kind of poof.
One fun note about those HPW shows, Jason Ayers, who I think a lot of people know as referee, but he's been doing production for a long time. He actually did my second entrance music. He did a combination of Henry Rollins' version of War into the theme from Cops. So, since I was Johnny Law.
Right.
But when he burned the CD, it got a scratch on it. So at HPW, my music would scratch on the way out. So the second show I did that, since I was playing the villain, I played into it. So I insulted him for screwing up my music because he was the referee, and went over and argued with the sound guy and took the CD and broke it in half and all the usual Memphis style heel antics, except for some reason the Columbus crowd ate it up. And it's the only time I've ever had blows with fans, with members of the crowd.
So you said blows with the crowd, like they actually you got in a fight with somebody?
There were a couple of people shoving, a couple punches thrown at my direction. Either the sound guy or Jason were extremely well liked in Columbus. So occasionally when Jason and I still talk to this day, he brings that up as how did you tick the crowd off? Like, I don't know. I hadn't even started the match. I hadn't even started the basic heel antics. So.
Oh man, that's when you know you're a good heel, when you literally you don't even have to do anything, and they're just like, "Yep, we hate you."
It was one of those moments like I don't know what I did right, but it must have been something. So shoot. If I'd have been smarter, that would have been part of the gimmick in every city. CD scratching and wait a second, this is a tape. Yeah, whatever. Still, I'm yelling at the guy.
Oh man, that cracks me up though. And that's funny too. Is that you don't see that nowadays. Obviously, the concept of kayfabe is a little not so desired nowadays. But back in the day, it was a little more of people really bought into it more. I feel like.
It's definitely a different show when the fan is buying the entire concept. And knowing that they love or hate, as it may be, with legitimate passion,
right,
is truly something special. In a way that's it can be tough for the average person to sort of wrap their head around. That and Steve Austin is fond of saying no one goes into a Mission Impossible movie not knowing that Tom Cruise is playing Ethan Hunt, but it was always fun to recognize or try to get sympathy from the fans that really, really bought into the show.
Absolutely. And like I said, nowadays that's not so much a thing anymore. I feel like a lot of people are kind of either disenchanted with the concept, and they're just like, yeah, we know that you're not really in there, kicking the crap out of each other, but you guys keep doing that.
Well, it definitely has changed, and everybody's an armchair philosopher, but
right,
sort of. There's still some. It's changed in the sense that sort of like Penn and Teller pull back the curtain just a bit, but they didn't use that as a way to hook people even more. So I do see at some of the independent shows I go to now. Heroes and Legends, pardon me, and the FWF up in Warsaw. I check out WTF in Carmel these days, and everybody's in on it, but right. That just means you can antagonize in a slightly different way. For example, Drew Skills works a lot of those shows, and I'll be darned if it just means he doesn't antagonize the adults as much. He picks on the kids on his way to the ring, but it's a moderate change, but it still makes it still gets the crowd hot against him. And in the ring, it's just a minor modification of the same tactics that were used in years past, and it works. I would say pretty darn well. Drew, right. I think Dave's had Drew on the podcast, and he's really good at what he does. Absolutely,
yeah. I'm fairly familiar with him, and definitely knows what he's doing in there, and getting that reaction, that's 100%. That's all him.
Absolutely.
But so definitely, and it's very interesting because you mentioned a lot of because we were talking a little bit about places you worked, and you mentioned a lot of really great places, including HPW and Heroes and Legends and EWF and whatnot. So one other question I kind of had for you, we had mentioned a little bit, you talked about your Johnny Law gimmick, and this is actually not something I'm familiar with, but you actually later modified your gimmick into more of a fire-breathing deal. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Johnny Law was your bog standard cop gimmick, and Jason originally envisioned us when it was the tag team Police Brutality, that we would be clean-cut baby faces. And I kind of got where he was going with it because the Big Boss Man was popular, and at least superficially, the two of us were, reasonably attractive young individuals, short haircuts, but the crowd absolutely did not one iota did we ever get cheered as Police Brutality. To call us the drizzling shits in terms of character would be an understatement. But it only took 1.5 shows before, literally we were halfway through the second match before, you know what, we'll just steer into this skid and go with the heel aspect and go on from there. But when it came time to try something different, I didn't think I could make the cop character work as a babyface. I wasn't quite funny enough in that character the way that, say, for example, Rod Street can be as hilarious as he is vicious as his police character. I just couldn't make that work. So I had to add something. And something like breathing fire seemed like it would be fun. So I Googled how to breathe fire, taught myself how to do it, and added it to the gimmick. I just didn't change the name, and was Fire Breathing Johnny Law. But it did allow for some fun spots where a villainous heel would be cutting a promo, and they would have their back to me. They'd be insulting me, or they'd be insulting somebody, and you could do the fire breathing gimmick, and oh my God, they'd take a powder or fall down or get scared and get tangled up, and that would be the impetus for something else.
Right.
But it was
so it worked though. That's what's important.
Well, it's definitely a good way to get the crowd invested at the start. You still gotta put in a good match after that, but it never failed to get attention right at the start.
Absolutely. And I saw that question because obviously I was I was obviously had some information about your work, but at no point was I included in the fire breathing part of it. So I was a little curious, just a little bit.
I even pulled that out at the Heroes and Legends did an EWF reunion show about a year ago, and I happily participated in the Battle Royal and did that on the way to the ring. And apparently not everybody knew I was going to do that, so I caught some flack in the back not telling everybody. But at the same time, without pulling the curtain back too much, I came into the back with the gear, so it was, here's an outfit as well as I've got a jug of flammable liquid, a torch, and implements of fire, and everyone commenting about, so Johnny Law is back, 100%. So
you're like, look, it's not my fault. You can't put two and two together here.
Well, I even made certain the gear worked outside, but apparently a few people weren't there early before the show. But that was so much. Tasted terrible though.
Right.
For anyone listening to this, it's not mechanically terribly complicated. You just have to put up with extremely foul-tasting liquid and be prepared that if you screw up, well, you're going to have a bad night. So,
right. Just be prepared. Like they say, if you play with fire, you might get burned. Quite a little bit early in this case.
Remember when the first time my mother saw it, and we haven't mentioned that yet. My mom was a huge fan of pro wrestling and came to as many shows as she could. And the first time she saw that, it was, I was worried about getting injured from a pile driver or something else. And to her credit, identifying the moves that might be dangerous, but this is something else.
Right.
Mom, I never thought that you would be 100% on board with the pro wrestling, but the fire breathing, that's where you draw a line.
You're like, you have some weird standards here, and like I'm kind of confused.
That by the way, a fun tangent there. I always loved when my mom came to the shows. Even after I moved on from wrestling to doing ring announcing. Spoiler for the rest of the podcast. It was always fun to have somebody in the crowd. In sort of the old-fashioned Memphis Secrets of Pro Wrestling, the NBC special sort of way, like, there's actually an old lady in the crowd you can harass. And with impunity, she's not going to take a pop at you. It was always fun to have her out there because I'd give her a box of popcorn from the concession stand and I'd be, look, go steal her popcorn.
And that's good, too. That's good placement. And like you said, that kind of harkens back to the good old days when that was something that you did. That's great, though. That's just good old-fashioned fun, if you ask me. But
at some point in time, I couldn't do it in the EWF too often because everyone knew who she was. Like, yeah, we know that. Why are they always picking on this lady?
Right. Why are you picking on the old lady for, guys? What the heck?
Seriously, she's only here weeks when Johnny Law's here. She must
Wait a second. No. Light bulb flicks on. No. But and actually, that's a good lead into the next part of this. Is that we talked a lot about your wrestling, talked a lot about your gimmicks, but obviously, for the most part, when you wrestle for a long time, that eventually comes to an end. And for some people, they get out of the business altogether. And from what we've been talking about, you didn't. You just moved on to a different facet of wrestling. So what happened after you kind of stepped away from in-ring action?
Well, I stepped away from doing the EWF shows on the regular around the time Jason stopped promoting them weekly. For a long time, the EWF was doing weekly shows. Right. But at some point in time, I had to make a decision about whether or not I was going to try to make a full go of it, or which is the decision I made,
right,
actually pay down my student loans. So I had an internship in telecom that I transitioned into a full-time gig in Indianapolis and had to transition my weekends to frankly, rehabbing a house that I purchased. So I went to having weekends free for wrestling to literally working 7 days a week between the shoot job and the weekend trying to make a home. And I ended up doing that for the better part of 2 years. And by the point that had stabilized, the EWF wasn't running as regularly, and I had more than a few concussions because extreme wrestling was quite in vogue. And like many of us, I was far too willing to put my head in danger. So I dialed it back quite a bit. But when the opportunity presented itself to do ring announcing, I started to do ring announcing, and I've done it for Healers and Legends a few times. I've done it several times for the FWF. They run primarily up in Warsaw. Brian Johnson promotes those shows, and they've got a pretty good thing running up there, as well as doing it occasionally at other shows, most recently for WTF in Carmel, where I also do play-by-play for their video streaming and DVD releases. So basically migrated from an active in-ring role to the ring announcing and production aspects where local federations need a hand, and happy to do so.
Absolutely. So and that's obviously an interesting kind of transition, because obviously having been in the ring and doing a lot of the in-ring action, transitioning to that more and that kind of that internal importance where you're doing the ring announcing, you're doing the commentary. I'm sure that's still quite fun, but what was that transition like? Was it an easy transition, or were you just like, okay, maybe so?
It wasn't hard in the sense that there were a few instances where I don't remember driving a couple hours, pull back the curtain really hard. Right. After a couple of the rougher concussions. So it wasn't difficult to say, you know what, I shouldn't be doing the really risky, dangerous matches. And at the point in time when the opportunity to start doing ring announcing came up, I'd already started at the law school in Indianapolis, the IU McKinney School of Law. So I'd taken public speaking courses. I'd been at least moderately competent. I mean, been in pro wrestling, had some ability to cut a promo. Right. So migrating from one showmanship aspect to another really just involved pulling out a tuxedo and, dressing to the nines instead of throwing on the wrist tape and boots.
Right, absolutely. So not too hard at all, which is a good thing. It obviously seems like you have that transition down pat in that case. And I guess kind of along the same lines, we talked a lot about basically your wrestling career, a lot about the different gimmicks, and then kind of transitioning into a non-wrestling aspect, or I should say non-in-ring aspect of wrestling. But if you had to kind of pinpoint it, because looking back on your career, what do you miss most about wrestling? Obviously, you're still kind of active in the platform, but what do you miss most about wrestling?
The two things. There is a certain amount of joy, as weird as it sounds, in the physicality of the process. Yeah. It's very exhilarating from a performance aspect to do those things. I mean, even at my absolute tip-top shape, I wasn't what you would call a small guy, but it was really cool to be able to do a spinning backflip in the ring, or do a cross the ring leg drop, which was some of the things I could do that were out of character for somebody of my size, and that's just exhilarating. And when you factor in that you can elicit an emotional response from the crowd, be it good or bad, is really a fun thing to do. So losing that is a little sad, but being a ring announcer, it's easy to make yourself the straight man for somebody to play off of. I mean, it's tremendously fun, intentionally or unintentionally. if say, for example, the bad guy's trying to intimidate the ring announcer, I'll steer into that skid because it makes them look better, and making me look like the fool is part of the show. So it's so much fun to do.
Absolutely. And, it's actually something I've actually heard quite a few times, I can't remember who I was talking to the other day, but they said, one of the things I miss most about wrestling is that, like you said, the physicality, being in good shape, being able to do things that I wouldn't normally be able to do. And I was like, I can't relate, but I feel you.
It's surprising. There are some guys more now, especially now that the knowledge of kinesiology and nutrition is really down to a fine art. You don't have a lot of people that don't look good, but I never knew anybody that wasn't, let's go for the double negative, that wasn't comically strong, even if they didn't necessarily look it. Right. It's definitely more from the 80s to talk about you want the pro wrestler on your side in a bar fight, but all of these guys were ridiculously strong, and it's the physical feats that you perform in there that even the crowd may not appreciate was always kind of amazing.
Absolutely. And and that's something also that I feel like some people, it kind of just goes over their head. Well, you think about the people who get in the ring and they do these crazy things, these crazy moves, these suplexes, all the crazy, these slams, and you're just like, oh yeah, that's nothing. But they don't understand that, quite literally, these are this is inhuman. I can't hardly pick someone up my size, much less anybody smaller than me.
And make it look easy.
Exactly.
So much fun. And I didn't bring this up. One of the other fun aspects of pro wrestling is just especially independent wrestling, is just the unusual venues where you do shows. And obviously they're bar shows. Those are fun. But for example, for me personally, my graduation party was a professional wrestling show. I eschewed the more common, bring people over, have pictures, and a buffet. Nope. Had a pro wrestling show.
That's my kind of graduation party.
brought the ring in. A lot of the guys I ended up working with in the EWF were kind enough to do the show for extremely reasonable amounts of money, and true to form, I would give Jason credit, beat me at my own wrestling show. I eventually went over in the Battle Royal, but it was quite fun hearing the bad guy get booed at my own graduation. So,
right.
Absolutely hilarious.
That's great, though. And like I said, that's my kind of graduation party. I have to convince Dave. When I graduate college, I'll have to tell Dave Dynasty, be like, yo, let's just throw a wrestling match. Just nothing else, just that.
It definitely made the last few days of school interesting, because I went from the weird guy who was a pro wrestling fan to the weird guy who is a pro wrestler. That was the strange transition. Is Fulte did what? Oh, okay.
You're just like, all right.
It's amazing how that stuff travels as well. When I was a student at the law school, and I recently graduated and was recently sworn as an attorney here in Indiana, but without naming names, there was staff at the law school who recognized me. So, are you Johnny Law? Holy shit! It's I'm sorry.
What are you doing at law school, man?
The real kicker was I wasn't the only wrestler there. There was another gentleman from OVW whose ring name I just cannot remember, who was also there getting his law degree. So I'm not the only crazy person here.
In situations like that, and part of my French, I just be like, small fucking world, dude. Small fucking world. This is such a tiny demographic of professional wrestlers in law school. That's the thinnest demographic of all time.
But there's like, I think there's three of us. Apparently, this guy, myself, and David Otunga. Like, as far as I know, there aren't a lot of us that actually go so far as to become attorneys.
Good Lord, that is insane though. And actually, that kind of leads into our next question, which you've kind of already answered. But what are you up to currently? Obviously, you're a lawyer, but what else are you up to nowadays?
So you're right. I was just sworn as an attorney. I'm not practicing law full time yet.
Right.
Still staying with the telecom gig. To be frank, as far as shoot jobs goes, it's a pretty good one, and there are opportunities to grow that job. So I'm going to pull at that string and see where it goes.
Right.
But I am starting to practice on the side, and may decide to transition full time either to a firm in Indianapolis, depending on what opportunities are available, or outright start my own firm sometime here in the next few months. So, and if I do, I'll be advertising at shows as well as ring announcing. So, loads of fun there. And a fun note: when I was sworn in, I decided to harken back to the Johnny Law gimmick. So I actually wore the wrist tape on one of my arms, including the finger tape for the swearing in, which brought a little bit of the fun to the swearing in ceremony.
Right.
Fun to have the wrist tape on with a 3-piece suit.
Right. That's like some old school WWF stuff right there.
or a good old fashioned NWA, studio segment.
Right. Oh man, that's great though. And that, again, that's such a small demographic, but it's really cool that you made that transition into practicing law and whatnot, and all of that good stuff. And kind of along the same lines, we've talked a lot about what you do as a profession. But what is Johnny Law like or away from the ring? Do you have like any hobbies, anything quirky like that?
That is a tremendous question. So the hobby would have been law. Absolutely. That was the weird hobby I had on the side. If it wasn't pro wrestling, it was reading about legal decisions, keeping on top of them to the point where it irritated my wife, my family, my friends, and to their credit, somebody said, "Look, to be crass, sure, get off the pot. Go do the law thing or not."
Right.
So that was the hobby recently, but at the moment, I got a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. So any time that's not spent at work, doing the pro wrestling shows I do now or the law stuff is 100% theirs. And to that point, I've been bringing my 3-year-old to wrestling shows since she was 3 months old. So I have a series of pictures of her with Congo Kong, and it's fun to watch the progression from I don't care about this guy to, oh my God, this guy is terrifying. Right. And it'll be interesting to see when we transition back to, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Right. Right. And that's such a tremendous thing too, is that when they're so young, I had someone I knew that had a kid that was really little, and they used to come to wrestling shows and was terrified because of these big guys, these really big scary dudes, wearing masks and paint, and now they're just like, oh yeah, that's my best friend, and that's a really cool transition. It is.
And I look forward to it. I mean, Congo is a tremendous character and a tremendous person outside the ring as well. I don't think that's any secret. But the 3-month picture where she just could not care that this is just another warm hand holding her, to the 1-year picture of, oh my God, is that's the picture she's going to pull out and go, you're a terrible father. Well, right. It was fun at the time.
You're like, hey, I laughed at it, so that's all that matters. It's funny. I've talked to Congo Khan before we had him on here, and he's a really cool dude. He is. He's got a lot of really good thoughts about both wrestling and real life. But he's a really cool dude, 100% cool dude. But I guess to kind of wrap it up a little bit here, obviously you're still in the game a little bit. You still do the ring announcing and all that. So is there a way that our fans can follow you on social media? Obviously, we live in the social media age, so.
Absolutely. I'm at Twitter, at Foltzie, Foltzie. That's my personal nickname from when I was 12 years old. So that's stuck around. Facebook, at Jeremy Foltz. I haven't viewed myself as justifying having some sort of an entertainer page yet, so you can find me at either of those locations. And for any promoters, happy to ring announce for your shows. In theory, you could still book Johnny Law if you wanted. Always happy to do the reunion shows whenever Jason promotes one, but more than happy to do the ring announcing as well.
Absolutely. So you guys heard it here. Book Johnny Law, no. But,
if you want,
right?
that's your prerogative.
Right. I liked how your uncertainty was. I suppose I could book Johnny Law.
I would absolutely love it, but there's so much talent that the first thing I might say to a promoter is, have you tried Rod Street? Like, if you really want a cop gimmick, call Rod first.
Right. You're like, let me give you a couple of guys real quick, and then come back to me.
Well, it's more of a respect for putting on a good show than anything.
No, absolutely, 100%. Got to respect the art. So if you don't respect the art, you're not going to get anything out of it. That's what I say. But absolutely. Well, first of all, before we close out here, definitely want to thank you, Johnny, for coming on here, chatting with us, letting us pick your brain a little bit and getting to know who you are. So definitely it's been an honor and a pleasure getting to talk to you today. So thank you a lot for coming on here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Give my best to Dave. This has been fun, and a big shout out to the guys at the EWF. Not enough time to name check everybody, but Bob, King, Cheese, Eden, Phoenix, Justin. The list goes on and on. Ones that I don't have time to mention. Lots of love for those guys, and thank you for everybody, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Probably have to have you come back on here when you open up your own practice. That way we can get some legal advice from you. Happy
to do so. More than a few occasions when the topic turned to pro wrestling at law school, which it did a surprising amount of the time. I was tapped with, what's going on here. So
Right. So, but like I said, again, thank you for that. And everybody, go follow him on social media. The book Johnny Law.
Because not. That's going to be my new tagline.
Right, because why not?
You've heard him here on the Dave Dynasty Show as a guest and as host of the monthly Graham's Gallery episodes. And now you can hear his stories. You can own a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler, the audio book from Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., former multi-tag team champion in WWA and owner of Bruiser Bedlam. You can hear all of his encounters with the various wrestlers, places, and promotions he's worked as he tells about his colorful, long, and illustrious career. You can have your own copy for only $25, and that includes shipping and handling. It's very simple. Go on Facebook, look up Jerry Jaffe, Jaffe, send him a private message, and make arrangements to purchase a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler now. You will not regret this purchase. And we're back on the Dave Dynasty Show. Thank you to Wade Kastle and Johnny Law for being on this week. Thank you to Ike Isaacs for his work with those interviews. Thank you for all of you for being understanding and patient with all of our technical difficulties this week. Please visit DaveDynasty.com for all of our social media links. And while you're there, visit our ProWrestlingTees.com store and buy a shirt. We have a new shirt coming up very, very soon. It's not actually a Dave Dynasty Show shirt, but yet another shirt for a friend of the show, a legend of the sport that you will recognize. So watch out for that coming up soon. And we got some great shows coming up. The next 2 weeks, we have a two-parter. We had an interview so great, so in-depth, we had to split it into two parts with the one and only Les Thatcher. So you will hear half of that interview on the next two episodes. So make sure you check those out. A great conversation with Les where we talk about all aspects of his career, in the ring, behind the scenes, training, you name it, and we talk about it. Les is a great guy, so make sure you check that out. Make sure you follow us however you do it on all the social media outlets and however you listen to us, and do all that fun stuff we say every week. And I'm going to get out of here. We've got the show out. I'm happy. I'm relieved. And we'll see you next week with that amazing interview, part 1 of that amazing interview with Les Thatcher. So until then, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.